Fidelity High, the people you dig, the records they love.
Buzz Osborne is the frontman of the critically acclaimed rock band The Melvins. Formed in 1983 in Montesano, Washington, the band have released nearly 30 albums, numerous live recordings, and countless singles. 2014 saw the release of his debut solo album, the 17-song acoustic effort, This Machine Kills Artists. The documentary film, The Colossus of Destiny, A Melvin's Tale, was released in 2016. The Melvins' most recent studio album, Pincus Abortion Technician, was released in 2018 and features the Butthole Surfers, Jeff Pincus. Of the album, the Lion of Best Fits said, "It reflects their continued enthusiasm and well of ideas, and most importantly, their willingness to keep it weird," while Kerrang stated, "Their status as rock's quirkiest heroes remains irrefutable." He is set to release The Gift of Sacrifice, a solo album as King Buzzo, alongside Trevor Dunn of Mr. Bungle fame, in mid-May of 2020.
This is Buzz Osborne, and my Fidelity High is Mutiny and the Bad Seed by The Birthday Party. Originally, I heard these as EPs, not as the compilation, but eventually I bought the compilation on CD, so that's how I listened to it, mostly, is as an album, the whole thing, so I view it as one big giant thing, most of it, but I think the first song I heard off of it was played for me by Mark Arm from Mudhoney. He played me Deep in the Woods, I think. That was the first one I heard. So, and I couldn't stop thinking about it. It was really great. I mean, I thought it was a really interesting, simple, very powerful, and not really like anything I'd heard before. And that really set the tone for being a fan of it. I really do think it's my favorite record of theirs. The one I've listened to the most, definitely. I first heard both of these EPs probably mid-'80s somewhere. I was gone out of the Seattle area by 87, so it would have been before that. I don't know exactly when. Maybe a couple years before that. Maybe. But I didn't own them at the time. I listened to them from other people mostly. I didn't at the time around the mid '80s. I didn't have a lot of money for records, so I mostly had some, but I wasn't a guy that would go out and spend hundreds of dollars on records a week by any means. As big a fan as I was, I had ones that I really liked, but I think I didn't end up buying these until probably '88, probably. I bought them as EPs.
The Boys Next Door were formed in Melbourne, Australia, and released 2 studio LPs between 1979 and 1980. After a change in musical direction and a move to London, the band would rechristen themselves as The Birthday Party. In 2 years' time, they would release the acclaimed studio albums Prayers on Fire in 1981 and Junkyard the following year. 1983 would see the release of 2 separate EPs, Mutiny via the Mute Records label and The Bad Seed via 4AD. The 2 recordings would later be compiled together on one compact disc. The band's small but vital collection of music proved to be incredibly influential.
These records came out around the time that we were putting the band together. There was a band in Seattle around the same time called the U-Men, who I had heard before I heard The Birthday Party. And it wasn't until after that I realized I really liked them a lot. It wasn't until after the fact that I realized what an influence The Birthday Party were on them. But I heard the U-Men first. And so I was already a big fan of that kind of thing. And I liked kind of the rockabilly element sort of that they were in. You could tell the U-Men and certainly The Birthday Party were probably influenced heavily by like the Cramps and the Stooges and a lot of bands that I already liked, that sort of thing. So there is and there will continue to be big influential things that we take from The Birthday Party. Certainly. I mean, it's not a secret, I mean, but not in a way that's like a rip off, more like in the way that they were influenced by their whatever they were into. I mean, there's been labels in the U.S. like Touch and Go, where every single band on that label was, to me, almost a torturous rip off of the Birthday Party. I mean, it was almost like a prerequisite if you're going to be on Touch and Go that you had to rip off the Birthday Party. Seriously rip them off. And I always thought it was really funny that the guys in Killdozer would say, people would say, "You guys are influenced by the Birthday Party," and they go, "Influenced? We rip them off. We're not influenced." It's like I always thought that was really funny. I mean, it was clear what a huge impact they had on, certainly on those guys were really funny, but on a lot of snooty, highfalutin hipster types, that I think is lost on a lot of people now. I don't really hear that so much now. Not as much. They were dangerous to me. They were antisocial. They were no redeeming social value whatsoever. That's what I liked about it. I'm not really into message bands much. I mean, I think it's kind of pointless. Bob Dylan was good, but he was so odd about it and not straightforward with it that you could call it messages, but I don't know what it would be. Whereas, I think these things were more about, things that I could relate to better, like murdering and just general bad feelings. They're not feel-good music at all. ZZ Top was a feel-good band. These guys are feel-bad band, And I really like that about them. Music for me is, I've heard Nick Cave talk about this sort of thing. Music has influenced me in a way that all other art hasn't, And I think it's the most important art form, really, in a lot of ways, because there's never been a painting or a sculpture that has affected me the way that music has. I heard him talking about that as well, and I really identified with it. I was like, yeah, exactly. That's it. You can't, I don't care what you're looking at. It doesn't, and I don't care what people say. It has a much bigger, music in general has a much bigger impact than all other art. Movies to some degree too, which I think is really the ultimate art form as far as like what you're, sitting and watching, and storyline and music as well. But, just music in general. I mean, one time I talked to a guy who was an IndyCar racer in the early 70s. And he found out that I played music, and he goes, the only thing that gives me the same charge as when I was driving an IndyCar at top speed was music. So he goes, that's what it's like. And so I thought that was a really cool comparison. That's what I feel like. And that's what he felt like. The same as driving an Indy car at 170 miles or whatever, how fast they go, That's pretty amazing. That's a big deal.
For the Mutiny and the Bad Seed EPs, the Birthday Party's lineup would consist of Nick Cave on vocals, Roland S. Howard on guitar, Tracy Pugh on bass, and Mick Harvey on drums and guitar as well.
Sort of friends with the people that were in L7, and they did a tour with Nick Cave in a Lollapalooza tour, and they got to be friends with him to some degree. And he said I think Danita was telling me that that Nick Cave was telling her, Danita, this is good for you guys because you like the kids, but we hate the kids. It's like, that's right. That's the right answer. We hate the kids. Exactly. They've always hated the kids. And I've always thought that as well. It's like, I hated kids when I was a kid. I never got along with I never thought, that was anything that I wanted to be a part of or had nothing in common with most of them. And fortunately found my people out here in the world that I can perform and have and make a career out of playing music. But I don't feel like I've joined anything. They came to me. Well, certainly the songs on these two EPs, I don't know, there's nothing comforting about it. Nothing. That's what's good about it. And it reminds me of like the darkest Johnny Cash songs or George Jones, to me, that's what I hear in it. So I really like the guys that the musicians in the Birthday Party, but to me, the heart and soul, and I've heard Nick say this as well, the heart and soul of the band was Tracy Pugh, the bass player. I think that without him, they would have had a much harder row to hoe. I mean, it was that's what I'm listening to when I listen to these songs. It's like everybody's playing along with him, and like if you take a song like Swampland or any of those, I mean, it's the bass line I'm listening to mostly, or like Fears of Gun. That's the bass line in that to me is like one of the coolest bass lines he ever did. Swampland, Fears of Gun. If it was just those two songs, I'd have been happy. Mutiny in Heaven. It's the guitar is more textural to me, and the bass is where the riffs are. Which I think is really cool. It's a nice combination. It's like the guitars are backing up the bass player. And the drums on this, it's the first time Mick Harvey played drums, and it's not as I don't think he was as good a drummer as the other guy, but the songs are so good it didn't really make that much difference. I mean, he's not he's doing exactly, I guess, enough in it, but I've heard other drummers say that it was their least favorite because they didn't think it was interesting enough. But his drumming didn't ruin this for me. It's definitely my favorite. So.
The Mutiny and the Bad Seed EPs proved to be the Birthday Party's final records. They were chaotic, and some have said it's the sound of a band imploding. Eistersende Neubautens Blixa Bargeld plays guitar on the Mutiny track, Mutiny in Heaven. After the Birthday Party's breakup, Blixa would go on to play with Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds throughout the 80s and 90s, finally departing the band in 2003. Mick Harvey would also immediately carry on with Cave as part of the now legendary The Bad Seeds as well. The two would play together for the next 26 years until Harvey's departure from the band in 2009, marking the end of a 36-year working relationship between the pair. Bassist Tracy Pugh died from a brain hemorrhage in 1986 at 28 years old, and guitarist Roland S. Howard died in 2009 at the age of 50.
Well, I think it's been said that this is the end of the line for the Birthday Party. That they were there's a lot of tension in the studio. Blixa played on some of the or one of the songs at least. That everything was falling apart for him. But I think that they're more focused on this than I'd ever heard them personally. I don't really hear that, which leads me to believe that their breakup after this probably had more to do with personal issues of one form or another. I don't know what they would be, but that's what it sounds like more like to me. Because why would you stop? Why? You did all this work up to this point. It's time to quit. Just take a break, or whatever. Why would you quit? I'm going to quit. That's it. I mean, it's sort of like being married to somebody for 20 years and deciding that you're going to leave them. Well, you have 20 years in this person. Why would you leave? What's going on? I mean, it has to be, to me, some massively divorceable offense has to have happened other than, well, we just don't get along musically. It just doesn't make sense to me. What do you mean? What does that even mean? Do a solo record. You don't have to break it up. Why? Can't we do both? I've never understood that. It's always been weird to me. There's room for everything. And I'm not as big a fan of Nick's solo stuff as I am of the Birthday Party, which, tells me that there was more to it than just him. I don't know. And then I'm not as big a fan of Roland S. Howard stuff at all. Anything other than this. The combination is what somehow made it work. I don't know why. And, there's been a lot said, but I don't know how much is true. I certainly don't know anybody in the band. I've never talked to anyone that would really know. I would imagine drugs had a big part of it as well. So who knows? I know they were all involved in that, at least in one form or another. Maybe not all of them, but that's usually not a big career move. It's CLM, career limiting move. That's what, So at least that's the way it's looked to me in lots of situations. I've certainly had experience along those lines with people I've played with, and it never helps. But like with us, we've just never stopped. I don't see any reason why this should be finished. It doesn't make any sense to me. So, you just do. My opinion on that kind of thing is that you keep your head down and you work, and it's not any of your business what other people think of it. That may be what they think as well, It's not for me to decide, because I'm not making this for other people to like. I'm making it for me to like. And then thinking if I go along those lines, I have good taste, then other people will like it. That's it. But if I start trying to think, what are people going to be into, then I'm going to miss, because I don't know. No idea. I have no idea. I don't know the ugly depths of human nature or what sorts of things people are into today or tomorrow or whatever it is. All I know is that the power of what I'm doing as me is enough to carry it, and has been for this long. And I don't want to make the mistake of thinking and taking for granted what I've already done. So I don't. Which I think it's precious, and it's not something to be toyed with, and you don't just let it go, because you might not get it back. Why would you do it? So I kind of think if they knew this was the end for them, what were they thinking was going to be the beginning? And then what was the point of what they were doing? Because they never achieved it again, to me. That's a tragedy. There's moments, but nothing that has hit me as hard as the stuff on these EPs or their other records. I don't think they put out a bad record. But this is the one I've listened to the most. These two are I view it as one album. To me, it's an album. And I always listen to it together. And it's the one I've returned to the most.
Thank you to Buzz Osborne, and thank you for listening to this episode of Fidelity High. All other episodes of Fidelity High can be found at fidelityhigh.com.